It was a Friday evening when Daniel suddenly said, "I'll be late tonight. Don't wait for dinner." His voice was calm, but his hands trembled slightly as he tied his shoelaces. I watched him from the doorway, a strange feeling twisting inside me. He kissed my cheek quickly, too quickly, and walked out. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house like a secret I wasn't supposed to hear. For the next few minutes, I stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street. He didn't turn left toward the office as he usually did. He turned right, toward the old part of town. Something inside me whispered, "Follow him." I grabbed my keys, put on my coat, and started the car. The city lights flickered through my windshield as I kept my distance from his taillights. My heart was racing, but my mind was calm, focused. I didn't know where he was going or who he was meeting. But I knew one thing for sure that night: I would find out the truth. I didn't know I was about to see a side of my husband I had never seen before. The city felt different that night, darker, quieter. I followed Daniel's car through narrow streets, careful to keep a few cars between us. Every time he stopped at a red light, my heart jumped. I was terrified he'd see me, but curiosity was stronger than fear. He didn't drive toward his office or the shopping area. He turned toward the old industrial district, where the streetlights flickered and the air smelled of dust and rain. I hadn't been there in years. He parked near an old building with broken windows and a faded sign I couldn't read. For a moment, he stayed inside the car, checking his phone. Then he stepped out and looked around, as if making sure no one was following. I ducked behind a wall, my breath loud in my ears. After a few minutes, a woman appeared from the shadows. She was wearing a long coat, her face hidden by the streetlight. They spoke quietly. He touched her shoulder, gently, almost with care. My stomach turned. Who was she? Why here? Why so secret? 100 thoughts ran through my mind: an affair, blackmail, some hidden business. I felt anger, fear, and disbelief all at once. But I couldn't stop watching. I had to know. I crouched behind a parked car, barely breathing. The cold wind cut through my coat, but I didn't move. Daniel and the woman stood under a dim streetlight, their shadows stretching across the cracked pavement. The woman's voice was trembling. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught pieces: "Can't pay, please help, he's sick." Her hands were shaking as she spoke. Daniel nodded, his tone calm and gentle. Then he placed a hand on her shoulder. Something inside me broke. My chest tightened, and I felt the sting of tears. How many lies had he told me? How long had this been going on? The woman suddenly wiped her eyes and whispered something that made me freeze. "Thank you, doctor," she said softly. "You're the only one who helps without asking for anything." "Doctor?" I frowned. My husband wasn't a doctor. He worked in accounting. He had never studied medicine, never even liked hospitals. I stepped back, confused. My anger turned into unease. What kind of secret life was this? Before I could think, Daniel glanced around, and I hid again behind the car. My heart pounded so loudly I thought he'd hear it. Something was very wrong, and it wasn't the kind of betrayal I'd imagined. The woman led Daniel toward the old building. I waited a few seconds, then followed quietly, keeping to the shadows. The broken door creaked as they went inside. I hesitated, but my curiosity pushed me forward. Inside, The air smelled of disinfectant and old wood. The lights were dim, the walls cracked. Yet there was warmth, the kind that doesn't come from electricity but from people trying to do good. Daniel put down a small bag. The woman, now I could see her clearly, was wearing a nurse's uniform under her coat. She began preparing bandages and bottles of medicine. And then I saw him. My husband, my quiet, ordinary husband, carefully treating the injured hand of an old man. His voice was soft, patient. When a little boy began to cry, Daniel smiled and said, "Don't be scared, it will stop hurting soon." I stood frozen near the door, tears filling my eyes. He wasn't meeting a lover. He wasn't lying for pleasure or money. He was running a tiny clinic for people who had nowhere else to go. All those nights he said he was tired, he truly was. And all those times I doubted him, he was out here healing strangers. Guilt washed over me like a storm. The man I thought I knew, the man I had followed, was not hiding betrayal. He was hiding kindness. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept seeing him in that dim room, the way his hands trembled as he tied a bandage, the quiet comfort in his voice. When he finally came home, the clock showed almost midnight. He looked exhausted, but peaceful. I stood in the hallway waiting for him. "Daniel," I said quietly. He stopped, surprised. "Where were you?" He hesitated. "Just at work." "Don't lie," I whispered. "I saw you. I followed you." His face went pale. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he walked past me and sat on the couch. "You shouldn't have followed me," he said softly. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, tears in my eyes. "You're helping people. Why keep that a secret?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I'm not proud of it," he said. "I used to be a doctor. Years ago, I lost a patient. I made a mistake, and I could never forgive myself. I left medicine, changed jobs, but I couldn't stop wanting to help." His voice cracked. "I didn't want you to look at me with pride again. I just wanted peace." I sat beside him and began to cry. Not because he had lied, but because I had doubted a man whose heart was bigger than his words. The next morning, Daniel left early again. He kissed my forehead and said softly, "Don't wait up for me." His eyes looked tired, older than his years. When he was gone, I couldn't stop thinking about everything he had said. I needed to see it again, to understand it for myself. So that evening, I went back to the same building. Inside, the nurse I had seen before recognized me instantly. She smiled faintly. "You're his wife, aren't you?" I nodded. "Yes, but I didn't know what he was doing here." Her eyes softened. "He didn't tell you about his health either, did he?" I frowned. "His health?" She sighed. "He shouldn't be working this hard. His heart is weak. The doctor told him to rest, but he won't listen. He says if he stops helping people, he'll stop living." My throat went dry. I felt the air leave my lungs. My husband, the man I had doubted, was risking his life every night to help strangers. Tears blurred my vision as I looked around the small clinic. The walls were cracked, but the purpose behind them was pure. I left quietly, clutching my chest. I had followed him to uncover a lie, and instead, I had discovered a truth more painful than any betrayal. Months passed. Daniel continued his quiet routine, working in the day, healing strangers at night. I begged him to rest, but he only smiled and said, "Soon, I promise. One evening, rain was falling hard. I waited for his call, but none came. Hours passed. Something inside me told me to go. I grabbed my coat and drove straight to the clinic. When I entered, the nurse was crying. Daniel was lying on a stretcher, pale and still. The old lamp flickered above him. I ran to him, my hands shaking. "Daniel, please, open your eyes." He smiled faintly. "You followed me again," he whispered. "I'm glad you did." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "You should have told me," I sobbed. "You shouldn't have done this alone." He weakly took my hand. "I never wanted to hide from you. I just wanted to be someone worth following." His fingers felt cold, but his touch was gentle. I leaned close and whispered, "You are, Daniel. You always were." The rain kept falling outside, as if the world was crying with me. No one knows what happened next, whether he woke up again or slipped into peace. But I kept my promise. Every night, I returned to that little clinic. The same walls, the same faces, the same warmth. Sometimes we follow people to catch their lies and end up finding their truth. If you liked this story, please like, share, and subscribe.